I've already started to cut today. This is quite a lot to get through. I want to do a little bit of a razor A-line, and this is working on the beautiful Maddie mannequin from our friends at Pivot Point. The series is called Professionals Who Practice, and to be honest, I've kind of not been doing a lot of A-line shapes for a while. I just, besides where maybe fashion and trends are and people's opinions, it's just personally for me, I haven't been into a lot of kind of A-line work. So I felt like, hey, I need to kind of get a little bit of practice, play with it, because, just because you did something once or you've done it before, even many times, I find with our craft, if you're not practicing it, you can kind of lose that skill a little bit. So here I've chosen to work with the razor, and, to get the slightly more extreme quality that I'm going for, I'm letting the hair slide through my fingers. I've kind of chosen, I had to pre-game this out to think about where the angle is and what I want. And I chose a point right at the hairline and then a length point. This haircut was previously layered, so I had a little bit of a restriction on how far I could go through the front. And to get that technically with my finger angle wouldn't work so well here. So if you notice, at least to start off with, it gets a little more subtle as I go because I'm able to work with smaller sections. I'm letting that hair slide through my hands, working with the new comb clips that we have available. So the idea here is this is something kind of new to play around with, where there's a comb built into the clip. So if you're working a little bit more like this, kind of without doing tons and tons of pre-sectioning, you can just push that hair out of the way and hold it. Working with the feather plie, the hairbrain feather plie, starting to use a little bit of slicing on the last inch or so of the hair to get a little bit more of that chunky quality, a little bit of space. These Maddie mannequins from Pivot Point have a beautiful density of hair, not like some of the less expensive mannequins that have, holidays, so to speak, or, poor quality hair. We've got great hair to work with. I'm cutting off quite a bit today because this hair's already been very, very layered. We were filming in the studio earlier this week, and Ira Sage cut this mannequin, and there was a ton of length left, so you could do kind of more one length shapes like this, but there were a lot of concave layers. Otherwise, it's very rare that I would just go in and cut this much off because there's so much I could get out of it. But the hair was layered through a lot. Now notice, especially with something this extreme, I like to do a little checking with the scissor as I work through. The goal is really nothing's coming off. I know, if you find a mistake or something more than just a little nibble, you definitely want to go back to the original approach and find out what went wrong. But in my case, I'm just toughening it up. I didn't make any real bad mistakes there. Um, Jumping right back in. So sections just slightly angled forward, nothing too extreme. The line I'm cutting is more extreme than the section. The sections, I'm just trying to take an even amount of hair all the way through. It's kind of a big chunk of hair here. Just get that comb in there and push that out of the way. Again, I could have done a lot more intricate pre-sectioning, but just trying to kind of work in a very similar way to how I would like to work in the salon at salon speed. Slicing first on those last 2 or 3 inches of hair, create a little bit of space, a little bit of chunkiness. Now coming through, looking at that reference guide from the underneath, notice how the holding hand, I call it unzipping. We do this all the time with the razor at the front for a face frame. So again, I just kind of wanted to practice doing it at the back. I haven't been doing a lot of that kind of shape lately with that kind of more A-line quality. Getting the two sides together, looking at it from the back. Might be, depending on how it's going to be worn, there's always little detail work to do on the edge, but I'm not going to get too sucked into that right now. I just want to keep moving on in the right direction to get my shape in. So I think I'm just about ready to come into the sides. Obviously, this is an important part because we want to get that flow coming all the way through from the back. Clip that out of the way there. Yeah, these are kind of cool. I'm just getting comfortable with them because they're kind of a new thing. We're selling them at hairbrain.pro. They're created by a hairdresser out of Boston named Rob, Amplify the Stylist. And You know, a lot of my friends were using them. I was at an event in Amsterdam and people were having fun with them. I said, let's try it out. Let's get it on the store. People seem excited and interesting. Dampening the hair using some Bumble and Bumble tonic, the old school kind of razor cutter's favorite product. It adds a little bit of slip and hydration to the hair. Come right back in. You know, taking small amounts, only what my fingers can control. Again, a little bit of slicing. You can notice I rotate my hand a little bit into the angle. That's one of the fun things you can do with razor cutting is you can manipulate hair as you cut it. So I turn a little bit, I slice a little bit, and I work out to my length. Looking for balance. It feels pretty good. Head in a natural position as I come up into the side. Little bit of over direction. Not so much slicing right now because I'm really just trying to establish the length and the balance. I'd rather it be maybe a little too heavy and then later I can detail it. Coming back through. Looking on that same point on the opposite side. Looking for the balance in the length. You know, that hair should kind of work with you. Use the wide side of your comb and see if you're getting that movement. The razor will direct that hair and give it a kick and a movement forward. Okay, continuing up to finish off this side. And then I'm going to have a little bit of fun with bangs. I'd like to give this shape kind of short, fun, a little bit kind of contradictory bangs. Again, mostly because the previous shape had some shorter layers at the front. I really wanted to practice as part of this Professionals Who Practice series that we've been doing for many, many years using pivot point mannequins like the beautiful Maddie, one of my favorites. I love working on the blonder hair as well when cutting, especially with the razor. I love the texture that it shows and the wave and the movement. I love that it's got a slightly smaller head shape, which in actual fact is really kind of like a normal human head shape. Sometimes mannequins have really quite large head shapes, and I think sometimes we think that that's more the standard. But I love the Maddie, the Erica, because it's, you know, it's not going to make the lesson or the practice take extra long, you know, and it's definitely more than enough of a head shape and hair to get the lesson in. Always combing from the roots through to the ends with good even tension, slicing on the ends of the hair, and let the hand slide just a little bit as you chase the blade down, and always looking at that movement. A little bit of slicing, probably add some more as I detail, and then following that through. This would be kind of an important time to check my balance. So I'm going to turn her towards me. I'm going to get right down in front of her on eye level. I'll section this off to the same point because this side's already been kind of completed, and that could really throw you off. Feeling pretty good. Yep, pretty balanced by stepping in front of it, enough that I feel like I can complete this side. Just being aware to make sure that I don't lose too much on the front on this side. Now, because this hair was previously layered, concave, lots and lots of layers by my buddy Ira this week when we were in the studio creating some new courses for HV Live. I feel like I can drop this all down in one. Going to redamp the hair using some of my favorite tonic from Bumble and Bumble. Combing this really in its natural fall. And again, first removing some of that bulk, some bars of weight using slicing on the ends of the hair. Come back through, remove those bars, and again, slicing. I'm using the edge of the blade, so the blade is kind of making a T with the hair. So I'm getting kind of a chunky cut overall, which is really what I want here. I'm not really thinning. I know, you know, people always think the razor makes the hair thin, but in this case, you know, I'm taking weight out, but I'm not making the ends of the hair very, very thin. If the blade was flatter, you know, we'd literally be making the ends much more tapered or thin, but I wanted more of a chunky effect here. This is removing some weight, but not making those ends thin or weak in any way. They're still going to be kind of, you know, kind of weighty in a sense. Again, looking at my balance from side to side, feeling good. A little bit of detailing will have to happen. Now, because I didn't do a lot of slicing towards the front, I can come back in the opposite direction here, and I can do some slicing right here. And there's one other technique that I'm going to show you to fine tune this called tipping. You know, slicing is kind of a vertical movement through the hair. There I'm meeting up with some of those layers that Ira did, so not much is needed there. Tipping is like more of a cross movement or a horizontal movement, you know. So like looking at this with kind of diagonal forward sections, bringing this back above the occipital bone and kind of invisibly layering the hair inside by just tickling the last inch or so of hair with the corner of the blade. It just takes off, it's like softening up the corner without being so literal and rounding the corner, and especially where the hair tends to be denser or thicker. Continuing through, bringing this hair strongly back to keep the A-line, all the outline and everything's dropping away, and it kind of is merging some of those pre-existing layers with this A-line shape as well. And this little bit of tipping makes the ends of the hair so flexible and nice, which is great. Running out of hair, not too much here. A little bit right there. Now again, because this shape is, you know, it's meant to be defined and, you know, somewhat strong in a way, I'm going to do a little bit of checking with my scissor. The goal is not to have to take off a lot of hair, but to make sure that we've got balance and flow all the way through to the front. Over direct back, laying it across my hand, and checking the flow here from the back. This is where I can fine tune this front corner, you know, a little bit of combination of the previous shape and where I ended up on that. I don't think that the front corner was perfectly balanced. So for a little bit of fine tuning, the scissor is ideal right in here in this front corner. And again, you know, being aware of body position while you're cutting will help you get a better balance right off the bat. I probably could have had that more dialed in if I had made sure that my body positions really mirrored each other from side to side. One last check here, just detailing. You know, for me, it's not unusual to be a little bit more conservative on my first side and a little more aggressive on my second. So this was the first side that I cut even before we went live. Now I'm kind of dialing it in a bit. I'm going to add some product to this while it dries off. One of the original kind of razor cutter's favorite products, Brilliantine, from Bumble & Bumble, kind of started it all. Really, you know, I think when people think of the razor and think about how it can kind of, you know, pull on the ends of the hair, the idea when this kind of came out was to put a lot of moisture and oil into the ends of the hair so that you can kind of, even if you've got a lot of texture there, that it looks really kind of healthy and putting those natural oils back into it in separation. Oil and cream mixed together in a very classic sense. Looking for that little push through to the front. I'm going to push these back and now finish up with a little bit of fringe or bang, using the comb clips to push this hair out of the way. And we're going to drop this out. And kind of almost as like a contradiction to the rest of the haircut, we're going to come in here with like a shorter bang. You know, you've got that strong A-line. And then because you see this, you know, it wouldn't have worked to keep this because you lose your A-line qualities. I mean, I could have done something combined, but I wanted to have like a pretty strong A-line with the front being the longest part. So I thought, Maddie, would you be open to some bangs today? And she said, oh, absolutely, I'd love some bangs. So I'm going to work from the outside corner in, again, in a kind of a pretty traditional way. I'll work like 3 sections across diagonally like this. Hold them down at natural fall. Now I'm going to use the flat of the blade a little bit more to get, but in a very closed sense. Like my whole shoulder is probably in the way there because the camera's stationary. So let me turn her around a little bit so you guys can see here. It's probably going to be better. So if I use, the flat of the blade in a very kind of closed or short stroke, it's like I'm just kind of tickling in a little bit of a line here. So similar to kind of a scissored effect. And because the stroke is quite small, I'm not really, because edge cutting with a really open blade can give you a very different effect. But I find here, since I'm working with such a small stroke, I'm actually getting kind of a fun line. I am deliberately thinking like a little bit longer towards the center, and then I'll kind of remove any excess corner as the haircut goes on and kind of square it up. So this will probably be my third and final section across here. I'll break it into two. So this will be a little bit more of like a soft blunt. I mean, I think that term was popular a while ago, and it's like the razor can do that better than anything. It's like made for it. Now coming back around. Just adjust the old tripod. Comb that back out of the way. Now working across like so. You can see a little bit of where the longest point is meant to be because I crossed over through the center and now coming back around this way. So it's not very often that I cut totally flat, except when I'm doing things quite short. But again, when I want kind of like this soft blunt idea, this can be a fun way of doing it as well. And you'll notice now that I'm really just working with my fingertips because I wouldn't want to put too much pressure on the hair. So having the ability to just use the fingertips when you're razoring can be crucial. Now I should have a little bit of a corner here in the center because I worked from the two outside points in. And again, if I want to do a little detail work, which I do, especially dodging elbows here and there, I tend to then come in and work with the shear. So a soft blunt with a shear would be pointing very close together, So you're not really making a lot of separation in the hair, you're making a soft but blunt line. So here as I point cut to refine and balance, they're just very, very close together as opposed to really spaced out. Getting comfortable is a great way to practice being able to cut close to the skin without having to lift the hair a lot. Getting that nice kind of classic look. And you can also lift, so sometimes a little elevation on something like this, especially if you built a corner, and just break that corner up with a little elevation. If you're taking a lot off, you're going to change everything that you did. But here I'm just doing little nibbles. Oh, there was one last thing that I didn't do on this second side. I jumped right to the bang. But can you blame me? Because, kind of pulls the whole thing together. I wanted to show you a little bit of the tipping to kind of finish this off. Oh, I think maybe I did do it. I did actually. But I can come across the two sides and make sure that there's a little bit of a tipping across the center. Right in here. Just right across the both sides. I'm going to put in a little bit more brilliantine. Maybe dampen the hair a little bit with some tonic. You can see the angle. So technically I wasn't trying to put in graduation. You're going to get some because of the texture and the action of the blade. So, I mean, there are ways to create a perfect one length. Well, not perfect. Let's call it an imperfect one length using the razor. I wasn't going for that. I didn't mind that it had some of this lift and movement through the back. Get her up a little higher above the comments there. But again, you have that lift. You've got that nice kick and swing forward. Just getting a little bit more tonic in there. It's been a pleasure sharing this with you guys. Just a little quick kind of fun A-line razor shape. I hope you enjoyed that. Have a wonderful weekend.